Yes, it's time for Say Something. I'm Renee Smith Maddox. I'm one of the co hosts, and I'm so happy that you're here this week. As usual, we have a great guest, and we're going to have a great conversation. But before we get there, I want to volley it to my co host who's in Florida.
Yes, in the warm weather of Florida, I am hanging out over here, and just thankful that we have such a wonderful guest today. And thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. So I'm going to volley it back.
Our conversations, as usual, in at least in the way we designed it, it was intended to be for you. And we're using this month, which we know we all call Black History Month, but it is February, and it is a month to meet inspiring African American change makers who improve the world every minute of every day with their perspectives, their courage, and their tenacity. They are living examples of servant leaders, social innovators, public scholars, advocates, educators, activists. These are the people that get into good trouble. Black history is every day, 365 days per year. Black folks have been change makers, liberators, and thought leaders behind every major movement. It is time. It is time. It is time to recognize their resilience, their wisdom, their brilliance and ingenuity, and their contribution to this country. It is time to celebrate them and be inspired to action by their contributions. Just to give you a little bit of history, it was Dr. Carter G. Woodson. He, in my book, is a change maker. He created what we know today as Black History Month, but he also used independent public media to center the contributions of Black people throughout history in public discourse. He knew that he had to create the publication channels to get our history out. So, diversifying education and media is just as important today as it was then. We have to find ways to get our history told. We have to find a way to be the authors of our narratives. So I hope today's conversation encourages you to keep pursuing new sources to learn and unlearn as we write these new narratives about America's history. So it was Sunday, February 7th. And for all of you football fans, it was known as Super Bowl 55. We once again, we saw Amanda Gorman hit the stage and she shared a poem that she dedicated to the honorary captains of the day. And we are delighted, absolutely delighted to have one of those honorary captains here, Trimaine Davis. But I just for a minute want you to hear what Amanda had to say about Trimaine. Trimaine is an educator who works nonstop, providing his community with hotspots, laptops, and tech workshops so his students have all the tools they need to succeed in life and school. Welcome, 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 Trimaine. We are so happy to have you to this segment of Say Something. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank y'all so much for just allowing me this opportunity to be here. This space, I can already tell is an incredible space, and to be featured in this space is humbling, and I'm going to do my best to live up to that incredible.
Well, you know what? Let's start off. And could you shed light on what Black History Month means to you?
Yeah, History Month to me I've been aware of Black History Month since I've been in 5th grade. I think was the first time I really like heard the concept of Black History Month and going into depth about the significance of it. But even then, like, we're just told about like a couple of different people in school. We're told about Dr. King, we were told about Rosa Parks, we was told about the Civil Rights Movement. And then, from there, well, for me at least, my curiosity like really turned on because I wanted to learn more. And then I went to a school during a time where like teachers would like put a PBS video in, they'll roll out the TV and put one of those PBS tapes and VCRs, and then we watched like the Eyes on the Prize series. And depending on what year you would watch it from, whatever the time frame from, you would hear about these other incredible people, but these people weren't in our textbooks. So for me, it's a time to like, just get repowered, to get refocused and to get recentered of the importance of my culture. One thing that I'm to for Black African American didn't start with my ancestors in shackles and chains. And I think that's so important because oftentimes we're introduced to the world as folks who are enslaved. And if this is our introduction to the world, unfortunately, that's piled on with the sense of there is a glass ceiling and we only can go so high. So to have Black history, to know, we come from a place that was the start of civilization, the first doctors, the first scientists, the folks who studied the stars and the moons, who brought things together, the first people who believe in one being in regards to, that gives me a pride and lets me know that I have a lot of work to live up to because our ancestors have done so much for us. And so it gives me a sense of gratitude as well. And I think that's how I try to lead throughout, but especially for Black History Month, I try to lead with a sense of.
Well, you said something about, it's time to get, recentered. And I'm wondering, tell us a little bit about your work and how you're inspired by it, how it helps you get recentered, because I know our listeners want to know more about what you do and why you do what you do.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate to be a servant in education. Education, only thing that I wanted to be a part of. Work when I was young. I was very fortunate to have some role models throughout my life that really paved the way for me. My 5th grade principal was a Black man, and that was very powerful for me to see as a young student, a reflection of someone who looked like me. I was also very fortunate enough to have my high school vice principal who made a tremendous impact in my life. And someone who I talk to this very day by the name of Dr. Aaron Vines also was a Black man. He was a Black man that like put a blueprint out for himself. He was a former student athlete. He played D1 college basketball. At the time, I was an aspiring student athlete. I wanted to go to college, and I figured that basketball would be my best opportunity to go. But to see him in a role, as an assistant principal, and to see how cool he was, how down to earth he was, the first man I saw like wearing suits all the time, So I'm like, oh, okay, so that's how you dress as an educator, So that really empowered me a lot. And it also just like really sparked the interest in becoming an educator. Now, I didn't know I was going to be an educator in this particular capacity in working in higher education, which over the past 14 years, I'm working at different schools throughout Southern California. But I knew I wanted to become an educator. I knew that I knew it was a vehicle that can help inspire the next generation because it inspired me. Just seeing people throughout my time, and those 2 folks that I mentioned. But also I thought that education would be a way to help my family. I'm the first person in my family to graduate high school, let alone go to college. So to have that, is a big impact, thinking about like you're the pioneer. You are the person that people are looking to make a way. And I didn't want to let them down, but most importantly, I didn't want to let myself down. So I've gravitated towards education because, again, like going back to like Black history, the people that I idolize in our culture, in our past, are educators. Whether we're talking about Malcolm, whether we're talking about Booker T, whether we're talking about Carter G. Woodson. I would even throw in Tupac in there as well. I'm an educator. You know, he may be a non-traditional educator. He definitely was educating folks through his lyrics. So I've always been inspired by folks who had a sense of knowledge about them, but also who was willing to share that knowledge.
Mhm.
And
It's
it's
about sharing their knowledge. Melissa.
You said something that struck me about having people that looked like you. And I say that all the time. Like if you think back of, somebody that has looked like you, and a lot of people go, I don't think I've ever had that before. I've never had somebody that reflected who I was. And then think about the qualities in those people. And I know that they've mentioned that you've done things for your students, but I also feel like you may have personality or characteristics like your role models that you give to students too. And that's above and beyond. That's that caring, the compassion, the respect for people that it's hard to measure, but I know it's there. I know it's there. What are some of those things that you take pride in when you walk into your classroom?
I think my pride comes from seeing students understand. You know, I think that's where I feel my most proud is when I see the light bulb go off in students, when I see and feel that students are empowered to like make moves and feel confident in the moves that they're making. It's like, oh, we got you. All right, you're on your way. You're on your path. And I think that's to me, that's like the most important ingredient in being an educator is helping students get to that point, but that to answer your question, that comes directly from the folks that made an impact in my life, and I instantly go back to high school. I go back to having conversations about the importance of utilizing your resources and your tools. And at the time, Principal Vines was talking to me about being a student athlete, and not just taking it for granted.
Mm.
Platform, elevate my life, and move on and go from there. And he was the person to just look at me playing basketball as a tool and not identifying me as just solely a young high school athlete. And that really sparked an interest in me and also led people who had that same kind of ideology. So, that led me to learning more about Tommy Smith, John Carlos, Russell, John Thompson, all these incredible, phenomenal athletes, but who went on to do more in their time. We know the power of the Tommy Smith and John Carlos in the Olympics '68. We know that Bill Russell played a big role in helping support Muhammad Ali throughout his time caught in the Vietnam War. So like to have someone to help spark that interest in me definitely played out a lot. What I really appreciate about him is that sometimes it seems to me, from my perspective, that athletics and education are in conflict. You will have a young person who's an athlete, and the thing that we say to them is like, well, what you gonna do when sport doesn't work? And that just like kills the dream of a young person. So it's not what you're gonna do when it doesn't work, it's how can you benefit once you're done playing? And that's a completely different philosophy. That's a completely different conversation to have with a young person. And I think there I was introduced really to like the power of education, of knowing that this is the one thing that will always maintain value, but also increase in value because we're constantly learning. Things that I know now, I didn't know 14 years ago when I first started off in this profession. But I had an opportunity for it to grow. And thankful that he was able to introduce me to that because that's the things that I tell students now that I work with who are student athletes. or folks who are aspiring to be student athletes. You know, it's about the importance of keeping that education piece, because that will take you just as far, if not further, than your physical talents will. And the worded that for me, like really, and I'm thankful for that, because that's something I use all the time. You know, I'm talking to young men in particular, but also young women who also are as well. It's about like, how can we use education to make sure that you are performing at your peak? How can we help you then see that these are transferable skills that will, and you know,
I know we're having a little technical difficulty or delay with audio, but I think it's coming back and forth, folks. So just be patient with us, because the conversation is just getting heated up. So this is good. As I'm listening to you, Trimaine, I'm reminded of Marian Wright Edelman's quote: "You can't be what you can't see." And, you know, all of the powerful moments you've been unpacking for us was, a testimony to you actually seeing people like yourself.
yeah,
Even if this was your first pathway in that educational trajectory, to see somebody like you, to see a Black male in an administrative position, just kept you anchored and kept you thriving and kept you on your mission, uh,
yes,
which, I just had to echo that as I'm listening to you, because it is not just, it's a truism. It is
yeah,
real. We need to see people like us in positions of power, in positions where they're the decision makers, where our young people can have hope.
that's right.
Have hope. It feeds into their vision. So powerful. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on.
Well, currently, as I said, I'm an educator in education, and I work at the other school,
The other school.
up the
You
street
won't
at
name that other
UCLA.
school. That's
Please
give
don't hold
all
that
the
against. Yeah.
give them all the props. So what unit at UCLA are you working with?
Yeah, so I work in a department that's known as the Academic Advancement Program, AAP. But in particularly with that unit, I work for a program called the VIP Scholars Program. And this program is designed to help students from the South LA community, students from Pasadena as well, to reach flagship institutions like UCLA. The great thing about what I do is that we're not a program that's solely geared on getting students to UCLA. Students have a passion to go to an HBCU. We want to make sure that the student gets what they need. And so I think that allows be a little bit more flexible, to be more open, and also to bring in more resources and working with other institutions, partners, community programs that help with those kind of to have those support and those connections to other institutions. And so my day-to-day routine is to help students that are in college, but who are at colleges that are outside of LA. So putting together resources for them, making sure that they're going into the right hands of people who care about them, finding out different resources and scholarship programs for those students as they continue to move on. Because as when you go to school out of state, that out of state tuition hits a little different. And, it's a little bit more pricey to go to out of school. So having resources like scholarships, with different grants, really helps students out and families out as well. Another great thing I love about our program is that we work with families. We're not just centered around the student. We want to make sure that the families know what we're doing. We invite families into our program so that they understand what kind of support they're going to need. Oftentimes, you work with first generation students, much is placed on the students, and it's unfortunately a bit of a separation between the student and the family. but we decided to work with families as well. So families are informed and know the importance of scholarships and how they can best support, even if they never touched a college campus before in their life, still able to support the student as they move forward. And I think one of the greatest things about the work that we do. And of course, when the pandemic shifted, or when it came, it shifted a lot of the focus and the resources that we're trying to get for our students. Very fortunate enough to be at an institution that had a bunch of different programs. And I wanted to make sure our students was aware of those programs along with their families. And so, we definitely capitalized on those opportunities and, was able to help students along the way. And somehow, some way that got picked up and someone knew about it. And next thing I know, I'm getting a call saying I'm an honorary captain for the Super Bowl. And that was an incredible experience.
Tell us more. There's a question from the audience. Tell us more. How did you become the Super Bowl captain? What does that mean? Kind of share the path, because you're the role model.
Wow, that's still it still hits me. When people say that I'm a worker bee, and I'm entrenched in the work that we do. But I've been very fortunate, to kind of be in the right place at the right time when it comes to my career. There are different times at different institutions where there needed to be some kind of policy shift. There needed to be some kind of organization to be built. And I was there during the time of things being built. This particular position is no different. I happen to be at an institution that has a number of different resources during the pandemic. I also have an incredible team of folks that I work with. So like the team that we work with are people who come from these communities, people who are committed to these communities. That makes the biggest difference in the world. There was never a time where we stopped and said, how are we going to make sure that what are we going to do to ensure? So we never stopped working. So just us learning how to get on Zoom, how to put together digital platforms that can be safe spaces. How can we interact? How comfortable were we going to be with ourselves? Because now in a different working environment, the space is different. It's different. That means that we have to have a different approach. So working from home, can we show our home life? Is it okay? What are some of the things that we have in common with students? And then, from there, we created a bunch of different programs around the things that we all have in relations to students. We all love music. We all tend to like certain things about fashion. We're all glued into what's going on culturally, and of course for our community, and just the pandemic that was a big hit. But we also saw, the rise of structural racism rear its ugly head and showcase that power, in the deaths of, so many of our ancestors that are no longer here. Whether we're talking about the George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, or Ancestor Arbery as well. So, there was a lot of different things that were going on, and it was important for us to provide a space to talk about these things before. But most important, to listen. This was a time for us to learn and really hear what was the students going through. And I think, we were very fortunate to do that. And we learned a whole lot from students, and from there was able to create other programs to help, with moving forward, with the information that our students were able to give us. So, again, I think just being fortunate, being around great people, but also making sure that we don't forget what's most important, which are our students. Our students are most important. So to have opportunities to listen, hear from where they're coming from, we were able to create some great programs around it, and I think, that in particular helped led to me getting this honor as being an honorary Super Bowl captain. I also worked on the NFL's Players Coalition. And so we were actually doing similar work on that side too, of trying to find organizations and programs that were willing to help with the digital divide. to provide services for communities that, you know, that has been without these resources. I think that's one thing that we have to make sure that we mention, is that this issue of digital divide, you know, going on right now in Texas, it's not new. This is something that's been around for forever, for a long time. But because we're in the conditions that we're in right now with this pandemic, we're able to really focus on it. There's nothing knocking us away from seeing these issues for what they really are. And I think that is something that, you know, if we have a blessing within this pandemic, I'm going to take that as a blessing, because we're able to like really talk about, but also really to create things that can help shift this as we move forward.
Creating change, that's what I'm hearing. And what a beautiful confluence of activities that, you know, came at the right time for those young people that you serve. We are winding down our program, but any call to action you would like to give the viewers, you know, what do the young people, what do we, you know, as adults need to do? And you can frame that in whatever way that you feel we need to hear it right now.
Well, I think a couple of different things. I think that unfortunately, in the time that we're in, we're too busy looking at and critiquing what we see others doing instead of doing work ourselves. And I think it's so important for us to realize that we all have something to do in this moment. And it doesn't mean that all of us go out to the front lines. You know, it means that wherever we are, there is a call to action. There is even more of a sense of responsibility for us to do the work on behalf of our people. We often think about, when we think about, like, you know, things that are happening in protest in organizations, we immediately go to like Dr. King, or we immediately go to like the Black Panther Party. We forget about the James Baldwin. We forget about the Ida B. Wells of the world, right? We forget about those who are in a position to like tell the story. And that job is as important as the job as folks on the front line. Forget about the importance of strategizing and being diplomatic in certain approaches.
Ooh, brother, you spoke the word today. Oh my goodness. You spoke the word today.
Yeah,
I am full. I am full and I am
yeah,
grateful. I am so
yeah.
grateful. We want you to know that this is your other home. So please let us know about what you're doing so we can promote it on our social media. We are so blessed to have you there working with our young people. You know, all I could say is keep on pushing on. And we would like for all of us, from Say Something, Gabby, Annalisa, Melissa, and myself, we just thank you, and we want to send you much love, peace, and blessings, my brother. Thank you for doing what you're doing. We applaud you. Yes, yes, and yes. Thank
Thank
you.
y'all. Thank y'all so much for having me on. And again, I feel like this is a part of that change. You know, like we need more spaces like this. So thank y'all so much for doing what y'all do.